Hey guys, we had an old welcome video in this group where I told my own personal health story and how the group got started and how our team came together. And I've been asked to update that and re-record it because it's old. It's about 10 years old, so it's time for a new reiteration of that. So first, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Leanna Capucci. I am now 48 years old, but this started for me when I was 29. And I'll give you a little bit of background on my own health history and what prompted me to move into functional nutrition and understanding ancestral nutrition and wanting to share this with the world and what our team mission is. We'll get into all of that. So go back in time a little bit. When I was 29 years old, I had accumulated throughout the course of my life 9 separate autoimmune conditions or diagnoses. We know now that all of those conditions are actually just one thing. It's all leaky gut. Leaky gut is the main cause of all autoimmune conditions. There are 550 different names for your body attacking itself because there are microscopic holes in your intestine that are leaking things that probably belong in your body, but into the wrong places. And now your immune system has to attack you in order to protect you from you. That's all that an autoimmune condition is. And when you have one, you get others because your body comes up with new and creative ways to tell you that something's broken and you have to fix it. So you don't have multiple conditions. You have one condition that has multiple manifestations. Now, there are reasons that people are more prone to or predisposed to autoimmune conditions, but they are not genetically caused. You have to create them, and that happens largely through diet, but also through other forms of epigenetics, and I'll get into that. So, as a child, I had asthma, allergies, and migraine headaches. Those started when I was 6 or 7 years old and got progressively worse as I went through my teenage years. I had a lot of joint pain and hypermobility, but I didn't know at that point that that meant that something wasn't right. I thought it was just normal for me. So later in life, I found out that I had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and eventually I ended up also with fibromyalgia. In addition to that, I had eczema and psoriasis, which are both autoimmune. So eczema, psoriasis, asthma, allergies, fibro, anxiety and depression, the EDS, and then when I went to have children, I started to have fertility issues, and I could not have a successful pregnancy. I had multiple miscarriages before I had my first child. So all of that combined, by the time I was 29 years old, I had severe hip and knee injuries and pain and inflammation that made it difficult to walk. At 29, I was looking at having hip replacement surgery. And I really did not want to have surgery, especially so young. So I opted to look at exercise and diet as an option. And that was kind of the beginning of me seeking other alternatives, was because of the pain that I was in. It really wasn't about the autoimmune issues. I thought I was just gonna have to live with those for the rest of my life. My educational background was biology pre-med with a minor in genetics, and everything that I was being taught, I had worked in medicine. I'd worked in pediatric medicine while I was in high school. In college, I moved to vascular surgery, emergency medicine, and radiology. My goal at that point was that I wanted to be a neurosurgeon, and I believed in the medical system. I was fully invested in the medical system, and it was where I saw my future. Throughout college and throughout working in the medical field, I realized that it wasn't for me. I was watching insurance companies make decisions about people they had never met that were life-altering. And I was watching doctors have their hands tied because the insurance company said, well, that's not what we want you to do. And there were no other options. And I knew at that point that the system was completely corrupt. I didn't know to what extent. I didn't know how far-reaching that was. But I knew at that point that I wasn't going to work in an industry where I, as the practitioner, was not able to do the right thing for the person I was working with. Because I do believe that most doctors get into medicine because they want to help people. And then they're limited by their education. They're limited by the way that the system works. They're limited by the rules and regulations put forth by pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies, not by practitioners or people with field work or people with experience. It's all about money at the end of the day. And so I knew that that wasn't what I wanted to do. So in my 20s, I moved out of working in medicine and decided to reinvent myself. I did some other things. And during that time, my autoimmune conditions continued to get worse and worse and worse. And at that point, I have 3 siblings, and my brother, who's 5 years younger than me, so I was 29, he was 24, had been diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, and he was on medication, but it was affecting his life. He couldn't work out, he couldn't go to school, he couldn't do his job. And they had recommended a colon resection and told him that at 24 they would begin resecting his colon, but that over time it would only get worse, that this was an incurable disease, and that over time he would eventually lose his entire colon and be on a colostomy bag for the rest of his life. I was more frightened about what that meant for my younger brother than what any of these things that I was going through meant. So I began to research, and I found that there had been significant success with a paleo diet or an ancestral style diet in reversing ulcerative colitis. And so we set out on a 90-day mission to prevent his surgery. And in that 90 days, I'm happy to say that when he went back in and had to do the surgical prep, they could no longer find any signs of inflammation. His ulcerative colitis was in remission, and to this day, he's never had that surgery. So fast forward a little bit, I started to implement that as my lifestyle as well. Within 30 days, my asthma symptoms were completely gone. I had been on a nebulizer and inhalers, multiple inhalers and steroids, since I was about 8 years old. For the first time in my life, I was not on any asthma medications. I was not having any issues with wheezing. It was asymptomatic of my asthma completely, and it only took me 30 days. And you'll see that things started to unravel a little at a time. As I addressed the gut and the gut microbiome and the gut permeability, which is what it is when there's little holes and things escape, everything else started to fix, because the gut is the most important part of your body. It controls brain function, it controls organ function, it controls immune function. We call the gut many times the second brain, but it's really the most important thing. And inside your gut, for every 1 human cell in your body, you have upwards of 10 bacterial cells that you live symbiotically with that are responsible for you being alive. So that microbiome is critical to your life, and without it you would die. And so when we restore the integrity of the gut, when we restore the integrity of the microbiome, the body fixes itself from the inside out. And that's exactly what happened with me. So first the asthma went away, and then my anxiety and depression improved dramatically. I was able to regulate my endorphins. We'll talk a little bit more about genetics and where that plays in, but largely anxiety, depression, ADD, ADHD are all linked to gut function through the vagus nerve. If there's something wrong with your gut, there's going to be something wrong with your brain, and vice versa. They talk back and forth to each other all day long, every day. So my anxiety and my depression improved, and then the next thing I noticed was my allergies went away. I had been allergic to cats with an anaphylactic reaction my whole life. I couldn't visit my aunts who had cats. I couldn't be around them. I couldn't go to a friend's house if they had cats. My throat would swell shut. My eyes would swell up. I would break out in hives all over my body. And for the first time, I was in someone's house with a cat and didn't know that they had a cat. Like I had no reaction to it. Same with bee stings. I had an anaphylactic reaction to bee stings, and after fixing my gut, I no longer have a reaction to stings. Bees, wasps, you name it. I've been stung multiple times, never had a problem. I don't even swell anymore. So allergies was next. Seasonal allergies completely went away. And then my joint pain improved. And with exercise and focusing on structure and then focusing on inflammation, all of my symptoms of fibromyalgia went away. And my Ehlers-Danlos, which is genetically linked, is improved to the point that I have no real symptoms other than the fact that I am still hyperflexible in certain areas. But I don't have pain, I don't have complications, and now I understand how to make my body make more collagen. And so by doing that, I'm not as prone to the injuries and things that I once was because of the excessive amount of elastin and lack of collagen in my body as it occurs. So I've learned how to overcompensate for some of these genetic issues through nutrition to permanently fix them. And that's possible for every single one of you. That's what I want you to understand. There's nothing that's not possible. We did a video in 2020, I think, called The 55 Ways to Die. And we talked about the 55 ways, according to the American Medical Association, that most people die annually in the United States and abroad. And of those 55 ways to die, 53 of them were completely preventable and completely curable through nutrition alone. The only thing that wasn't was the car accidents and drug overdoses. That's it. Everything else, you have the power within you to fix it. You just may not have the information yet. And that's what we're here for. So going back to my story, I ended up at 34 with endometriosis as a result of a medical procedure I'd had. So I ended up having 3 children. So fertility issues improved. I ended up having 3 children between 29 and 32. And after my 3rd child, I decided to have a tubal ligation, which was a mistake because now I know that most tubals end up with people resulting in endometriosis, and then after that resulting in a hysterectomy. So I ended up having a tubal. A year later, I had a very severe endometriosis. My family carries BRCA1 and 2, breast, ovarian, uterine cancer. So because of that, it was recommended that I have a hysterectomy at 35. And so I did. In retrospect, again, I would have done things differently now that I understand how hormones work and all of that. But I think everything I've been through for a reason, because God put me on a path to be able to help other people who think that their situation is insurmountable. So I've been through a lot of things, and I know that each one of them I've been through for a reason because I can pay that information forward. So, after my hysterectomy, I knew that I did not want to go on hormone replacement therapy of any type, not synthetic, not bioidentical. I'm 100% opposed to hormone replacement therapy because your uterus and ovaries do not make your hormones. They signal for them. Your liver and your intestines make your hormones, and therefore you can control hormone function throughout menopause, post-hysterectomy, you name it, whatever it is. There's never a good time, in my opinion, to take hormones. And if you do, you have to undo the damage because you become more and more reliant on them, and you are basically telling your body to shut off. Please don't do what you're please don't do what you're supposed to do because I'm going to do it better for you from the outside. So when we take synthetic things in, whether that's hormones, whether you're taking testosterone, you're taking estrogen, you're taking melatonin, which is a hormone, you're telling your body to not work. You're saying to it, I don't want you to do your job. And that's never the solution. It's the same reason I feel so adamantly about most medications. Sometimes there's a time and a place, but we have to exhaust what works first, or we have to understand that those medications have a time limit. They are a temporary fix while we fix the underlying root cause so that we can be better forever. Because when we rely on medications, the situation underneath the Band-Aid gets worse and worse and worse. You're not fixing the problem, you're covering it up. Until eventually you can't cover it up anymore because your body keeps coming to you saying, something's got to change. Do something. Listen to your body. It is infinitely wise. Your biology is perfect. Your body wants to function optimally. It can't if you're in its way. It can't if it's missing the things that it needs. Vital nutrients, the right diet, sleep, stress management techniques. You have got to give the good things to your body so that it can do its job, and you have to trust it, because it will. It will not fail you if you don't fail it. Moving forward, so get through my fertility issues, have my hysterectomy, learn how to balance my hormones completely naturally after being told by doctors it was impossible. I would be on HRT for the rest of my life or I would be miserable. Not true. So the last things to get better that did take me several years were my eczema and psoriasis. And that's because your skin is your largest organ. So it requires the most resources. But it's the least important when you look biologically at survival, right? The body has to protect the brain. The body has to protect the heart. The body has to protect the gut. So it sacrifices the skin. So very often people will notice the first thing to go is the skin. They'll start with eczema or psoriasis or dry skin or cystic acne, and it's the last thing to go, right? Along that process, I also lost over 50 pounds. I think 54 pounds was what I lost during that process, predominantly through diet. Very little exercise. I worked out 3 days a week for 15 minutes a day. Abs are born in the kitchen, and it is not about calories in, calories out. Everything you've been told about calories in, calories out, that's a lie. It is about nutrient density in. What can my body use as building blocks so that there is not waste? It is about not having empty calories that trigger blood sugar and insulin and lead to insulin resistance. There are 3 primary causes of all disease. Only 3. Leaky gut, and I lump that in with gut microbiome dysfunction. So gut dysbiosis and leaky gut, I lump together as one. So the integrity of the intestines. Number 2 is metabolic diseases, which are all rooted in insulin resistance. So blood sugar regulation issues, diabetes, Alzheimer's, which is type 3 diabetes. You have high blood pressure, which is metabolic in nature, and high triglycerides, which are metabolic in nature. And understand, I don't want to go on a rant about cholesterol right now, but cholesterol is your best friend. Only triglycerides present risk. And that can only happen if you have excess cholesterol, excess carbohydrates. So it's not about fat. Fats never hurt anybody. Proteins never hurt anybody, but carbohydrates can. It doesn't mean that everybody needs to be zero carb or that everybody even needs to be low carb. It means you have to understand how your body responds to these things correctly. And that's what we're here to help you do. And then, so the last thing to fix was really my skin. And so understand that in men, very often, they will lose weight, they'll lose inflammation, they'll look good on the outside and still be fixing their inside. And women are the opposite. Very often we have to fix from the inside out because so much relies on hormone balance. So we fix from the inside out. So the very last thing that we're going to notice is going to be the exterior things that we worry about more. Weight, skin, hair loss. Those are going to be the last things that come together. And you've got to be patient with your body. You have to let it do things its way. It isn't going to happen in your time or your plan, but you have to trust that it is happening. And so for me, that was hard. My now ex-husband lost weight much faster than I did. And he was seeing physical exterior results while I was feeling better. But I wasn't necessarily seeing the movement on the scale and the change in size and these skin issues go away until later. But within 5 years, all 9 of my autoimmune conditions were in remission. And now I'm in, God, I don't know, year 17 since this process started. Really, I would say I'm in year 13 in earnest where I've been 100%. And my goal is to teach people how to do this. But what I see out there that is so frustrating to me is I see that there is an absence of information on why, right? So you see all these groups that tell people eat keto and give you recipes and do this and you're going to lose weight, you're going to feel great. And there's all these groups on carnivore saying the same thing, eat this, this, and this. Be very diligent. And when people say they're having problems, what do they get in return? Oh, you're not doing it right. You're not doing it hard enough. You're not trying enough. You're not being consistent enough. That's not always the truth. The reality is that everybody's a little different. Sometimes you need a little extra help. And sometimes what works for somebody else isn't going to work for you. And that's why we look at genetics, and that's why we look at epigenetics. Your epigenetics is thousands of times more important to me than your genetics, because it's going to set the tone for how you turn your genes on and off on a daily basis. So you need somebody who's going to look at the big picture. And that's exactly what myself and our entire team does. Every person in this group, and we've got 100 team members in this group who might be tagging you in things, might be referring you to different information, might be willing to schedule an assessment with you. Every single one of those people first has their own health story. You don't get to be a member of this team unless you've changed your own health, unless you've walked a mile in the shoes of the people you're working with. You don't have the experience necessary to be a member of the team. And number two, they've all been trained in various forms of ancestral nutrition. They've all been trained in genetics. They've all been trained in epigenetics. And we all work together so that we're constantly troubleshooting, constantly problem solving. And so while you may have one person that is your contact, one person that is your mentor who brought you to this group, who's working one-on-one with you, know that behind the scenes, we're doing team training and we are talking about where the members of this group need us most. What is their experience? Where do we need to provide them more information? So you don't have one person you're working with. You have 100 people you're working with, and you have 10,000 people on your side. Okay, so this group is so powerful and so important, and I hope that you are as thrilled to be here as we are to have you here. When I started my business 15 years ago, I had 4 clients, and I was working one-on-one with everybody, and it was so hard. And so from that, we've developed online courses and the video series and the guides section so that you have access to all of these resources on your own. But we're always here for you. We're always here to work with you. And we've obviously expanded. Our team has grown. Our client load has grown. But at the end of the day, our mission is to get people out of doctor's offices unless it's a traumatic event that requires surgery, or unless there is some perplexing element that what we know works suddenly doesn't work. And then we're going to guide you through how to work with those practitioners so that you're not taken advantage of, so that you're not being misinformed or misled. Because so often what I see is that if you don't know the right question to ask, or you don't know the right way to speak to someone in that field, very often they make you feel dumb, or they make you feel like you're crazy. I remember sitting in a doctor's office before I knew any of this, thinking I knew a lot, thinking I knew everything, because look at my background. And it wasn't my first rodeo. I was working out 3 hours a day, 6 days a week, eating less than 1,000 calories a day, gaining weight until I was over 250 pounds. And I went to my doctor and I said, something has to be wrong with my thyroid, because I can't work out as much as I do and eat as little as I do and continue to gain weight the way that I am. And I remember him looking at me and saying, "You're such a liar. You can't possibly be eating what you're telling me that you're eating. You must be closet eating. So stop lying to yourself and stop lying to me and get the hell out of my office, because there's nothing wrong with you." And I was in my car hysterical, crying, because nobody would listen, and I knew that something was wrong with me. And there were lots of things wrong with me, but when I fixed my gut, they all got fixed, because I started from the inside out. And that's what it's all about. And that's what we're here to teach you to do. And so any person that you're working with on our team, you can trust that they're listening to you, that they're thinking about you as an individual, and that they have all of these resources that we've accumulated over the last 15 years to bring you everything you need and the best of everything that's out there. We are constantly vetting companies, vetting products, vetting research, so that you only have access to what's relevant, what's right, what's ethical, what works, and you never have to worry about that. So anyway, I'm glad you're here. We're all glad you're here. Please plug into the system, plug into the videos, plug into the guides. And if you haven't yet, have your free assessment. Trust me, you'll never be the same.